And here we are live on Let's Talk, Real Talk on Parental Alienation and Family Domestic Violence. Also, family court abuse, um, which is what enables all these alienators to take our children legally, as they say, but it's not. Welcome to our show today. We have Carey George from Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome, Carey. She is an alienated mom, 3 years of two children, 5 and 7. She has a horrible story, just like everybody else out here. Um, but I'm going to let Carey talk. And while I share this, actually, I forgot my device at the other end of the room, so I'm going to have to go and get it. But I'm going to let Carey introduce herself and start from the beginning on how she got into this situation. So, alienated parents, grandparents, alienated children, tune in and listen. Got any questions? Please ask. Share this podcast with anyone that you know that's going through any kind of divorce or family court right now, because it's important for everyone to understand what alienated parent can do to not only us but to our children. So welcome, Carey. Thank you for coming
Thank
to share
you.
your
Thank you for
story.
having me.
You're
Yep.
welcome. You're
So,
welcome.
my story actually started before my divorce even happened. My first experience with um, coming across what alienation is my friend whose name is Hope. She was an amazing, seemingly happy girl and good friend of mine. And she would message me occasionally. I'd see things on her Facebook profile of her little boy, and she was in an abusive relationship. Now, her little boy, um, he was not quite 2 years old, and her ex was abusive to her, and she clearly was suffering with all the posts that she posted on her profile, and she'd reach out to me, for emotional help, and she was clearly suffering. But um, they went to court, and the judge gave full custody to her partner, her son's father. And it was so much on her, she actually took her own life. And I sat there and I thought to myself, how could this happen? I wonder, you know, what would I do in her situation? What would I do if that happened to me? Her son was her entire world. There was nothing wrong with her. She did nothing wrong. She was an abuse victim. The judge just took her son from her and called her an unfit parent, completely took all custody. And I understand, having gone through that now, I understand, and I don't blame her at all. I understand why she did it. And that was a few years before my divorce happened. But we connected because my partner was also abusive. His favorite way to exert control over me was to strangle me. He'd put his hands around my neck any chance he got and shoved me against something, the wall, the door, the car window. Um, you know, I used to feel sorry for him because most of these sociopaths are created by their mothers, who are enmeshed with them. Um, I actually bought a book called Mother Enmeshed Men. I highly recommend it. It explains the dynamic, the psychological issues that stem from mothers who don't have a present husband. So, who do you blame? Do you blame the dad for not being present for the wife, so that the wife turns their son into a pseudo husband, to replace her husband because he's not showing up for her? Or do you blame the mother for not having the strength to stand up and say, you know what? I'm not going to turn my son into my pseudo husband because my husband can't show up for me, you know? So I think it's It's 50-50. I think it's partly obviously the husband's fault, partly the mother's fault, but there needs to be education surrounding these issues, because if we can educate people on the damages, the psychological damages of, first of all, if you're abusive to your wife, it's going to trickle down to your children, and your children are going to end up with psychological issues because the wife doesn't feel supported. And so the children can't be supported by extension. Like for me, for example, I developed chronic fatigue syndrome. I had PTSD. I would get triggered. I would just end up on my couch all day because of the abuse. I found I could not get out of the relationship because of Stockholm. I actually hired a therapist and I begged him. I said, please help me get out of this relationship. Do something to figure out something in my brain. How can I leave him? Because he would strangle me in front of my sons. He was an alcoholic. He was a drunkard. He was a drug addict. He had anger issues. Um, but most women, they don't know how to get out of these situations. And even men, there's abusive women, there's aggressive women who beat up their husbands. And they don't know how to get away because they're nice sometimes and then they're nasty the other times. So what do you do? It just digs it so psychologically deep into the psyche that maybe they're not so bad if they're giving me foot rubs every time that they strangle me. They give me an hour-long foot rub after they strangle me. Oh, maybe they're not so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really confuses the brain, to make you feel sorry for this person who's clearly abusing you, and you should be leaving. And I had multiple friends who were being treated so badly and being physically abused, and they would call me and they'd be like, he just did this to me and he just did that to me. And I'd be like, leave. Why don't you just leave? But here I was being strangled and I wasn't leaving either. So, it's so difficult because people blame you as the victim. Why didn't you just leave? You could have just left. No, you cannot just leave. It is the most difficult thing in the world to leave someone who loves you 1 second, portrays that they love you. They don't actually love you. Okay, love does not cause pain. So the education behind this really needs to be put out there to children, I feel, because if you can educate children on the signs of narcissism and the signs of abuse, of like, this is not love, you can prevent that in adulthood, because you just keep passing it down, generation after generation. I watched my mother being abused by my father, not physically, but emotionally and psychologically. And I married a man almost identical to my father, except add the physical abuse to it. So, that was my background. And when I finally said I had enough, because I got enough therapy to heal my inner wounding of my inability to see that this man was so toxic for me and I needed to get away from my ex-husband. My therapist said to me, do you love your children? And I said, of course I love my children. And he said, no, you don't. If you loved your sons, you would not be subjecting them to this atmosphere where they're watching you get strangled and pinned down on their bed. You do not love your children. You're lying to me. And that almost put up a light bulb. Like, you're right. If I actually did love my sons, I would not be keeping them in this environment. And that was when I decided I am going to do whatever it takes to get out of this situation. And that's when my will became stronger than the trauma bond. It's a realization. You come to a realization one day, and we all need to get to that point. And that's the point when we're like, okay, enough is enough. And I have to do something. We have to take action. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm done with the drugs. I'm done with the alcohol. I'm done with you having hookers sleeping in my basement while I'm sleeping upstairs with the kids, literally. And one of his friends who was an alcoholic, he'd go to the bar with him every night and do coke. He showed me all of his text messages. And I'm like, are you kidding me? There were text messages on there of him buying Coke, of him drinking Patron, and then going to pick up my sons from his mother's house immediately after, drinking shots at the bar. And I'm like, this is the most disgusting thing that I've ever like. I didn't see it before I saw the text message thread. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see how horrific of a human being he was. I did not want to see it. And
And
we
you know,
don't.
let me just jump in there. They do it so that they could be caught too, because it's not giving them a thrill anymore for doing it for so long that they get your reaction to what they're
Right.
doing. So this is what
Right.
this is. You're being set up now, right?
Right.
And because I know how I lost my vocal cord. We were only married a year. We're driving back from Hamilton to North Bay, and I started singing in the car. He literally he had hands like a big, massive, like the Friendly Giant's hand looked smaller, but he wrapped it around my throat and squeezed so tight that I passed out in the car and said that there'll be no more singing. You know, and all of a sudden it continued over a couple of years of being strangled. He broke my vocal cords so I wouldn't sing anymore. He popped my eardrums. This is, but, and who do you tell back in the 80s? This is something that we need to, like you said, to get out there to educate people, because when a young girl starts getting strangled at a young age, it's going to do so much damage because it's asphyxiation, brain damage, a lot of head trauma. So when your brains are being traumatized, you don't make it to be, the thinking is not normal anymore. And you're going to think that all these strangulations are like love. He loves me, so I better do what he tells me, or she. I mean, let's just switch the roles here. I'm not, because there is no gender for abuse. There are men and women out there, or even the same genders are abusing each other. So, this is huge. So, how did you know when it was time for you to go? Like, what happened in that moment? Because I know in my moment when he started doing what he did to me, to my girls were teenagers. That's when I said enough is enough. I went to a lawyer. I had to get my girls out of there. They were 14 and 16 at the time. They needed to get away from this. You don't, verbally, I don't even know how to say it, but the sexual comments about my girls coming from their father, that's not normal, right? So I said to him, it's time to split, I can't do this.
So, yeah, I actually, I kept making excuses for him. I really felt sorry for him because I saw the damage. I understand, because I'm in the psychology sort of background, and I understand how your childhood traumas can shape you into what you are. And I understood the damage that his mother inflicted on him. I understood, the trauma and the shame that surrounded being molested as a child, for him. So I felt sorry for him, and I kept staying, because every time I try to leave him, I'd say, I'm done with the drugs. Either you quit the drug, pick me, or the drugs. That's it. I said, you love your drugs more than you love your family. And he said, oh, I'll try. And every time it was a promise. And every time it was, he was going to kill himself, or I'm going to find him behind the apple tree with a bullet through his head. Or, and then when I finally was like, I'm tired of this, I said, go ahead, go jump off a bridge. And then he turned it around to, I'm going to stab myself and blame it on you, so that you end up in jail and I get the kids. And then he turned it around to, I'm going to kill you. And he actually Googled how to kill my wife.
Mm. And that's what they do. That's what they do.
So I
Because
couldn't leave.
if you,
I couldn't leave. I was so afraid. What would happen to my kids? What would happen to me? You know, because this guy is so psychotic. He threatened to stab. I used to hide in my son's bedroom, in my son's bed, because he had one of those tent beds. I used to go hide in my son's bed. I was so afraid of him. I literally thought he was going to kill me. How do you leave? You know?
That's just horrific. I know what you mean. He conditioned me by saying that he was going to lock me in the closet if I got fat. He was going to feed me bread and water. And the closet was only, it was a military closet in the military homes. It was 3 feet long, wide, and 2 feet deep. The hangers were, couldn't even put a decent hanger in there without hitting the door. But he'd shove me in there whenever he came home drunk. And it was pretty nasty. But it got to the point where I could hear him coming home. I worked night shifts too. I had 3 jobs a day just to stay away from him. I
I did
mean,
the same thing.
I
I
had no
worked for like,
choice.
yeah,
I
I
had
did
no
the same
choice.
thing.
He took
I
all
had
the
to be out of my
money.
house.
Yeah, he took all the money, all the money's his, and what's yours is mine, but what's mine is not yours, right? So that's the
Mhm.
mentality he gave me. So I worked
Yep.
3 jobs a day, but he never knew when I worked nights. I would go from one job straight to the night. I worked in a hotel in North Bay. So um, he didn't know whether I was home or not, but you could hear him coming down the street screaming, "You Kovaxes are all effing this and effing that." And, this is on a military base, and he's coming from drinking 45-cent shots. And to him, he was cheap. So 45 cents, he drank as much as he could, but he would come home. I would have, and if I heard that, I would hide in the closet that he conditioned me to go, that he would throw me in. I hid in there until he passed out, and then I'd come out because he thought I'd be at work. That's how bad it got. We have to protect ourselves, and yet I couldn't get away from him because the same thing. He'd kill himself, he said. And then one day I said, you know what? I hate to say this, but I said to him, go ahead, stop telling me. Just do it. And then he
Right? You get
stopped.
to that point. You get
Yeah,
to that point, and then they
you get
escalate to you.
exactly. And then this is how my daughter wrote me a couple years ago on social media, sending me a message at 29 years of age to go kill myself like I was intended to. Who says that to a mother? If I was protecting my kids from being suicidal because they went through, oh, daddy, please look at me, look at me. They had to beg for attention, right? For the whole time, because he was a soldier, never home. To the point where he said to the judge after coming home after 15 months to say, oh, I was the sole provider. I was there every day for them.
That's
Whoa, wait a minute. And
my,
then tells the
yeah.
judge that I couldn't handle the kids for the 12 months of separation that he filed. And I'm like, what? You didn't file no separation. You abandoned us. So they get very delusional, and the judges need to, start listening to what is really happening. And if they want to make money, well, do something to the people that are suffering. Put them in some kind of a rehab. Don't just let them sit there and take the kids and abuse them, because now my adult kids are psychopaths, just like their dad. That's the hardest thing for a mother to say. When I watch documentaries on young kids now that are just horrible, horrible, killing their parents and young girls or whoever, we could see that in our kids, because that's when they're alienated. They have evil in their brains. They don't have any more love left. They're dying to reach out to us in a good way, but they send us bad messages to make us, because they know we're going to love them forever. But it's to protect themselves from being punished further by the alienator, because they're not getting any more attention once they become adults. So now they're craving all this attention worldwide. And some become serial killers, rapists. Prisons are full of them, men and women. So it's our kids are being screwed up by the family court system.
Yeah, it's so sad, seeing all these people posting about things. It's like, what do you do? You know? But if we don't unite together against the common denominator, which is not the other gender, we will never, never fix the system. Because as long as they have us fighting, the mother's the problem. No, the dad's the problem. It isn't a gender issue. It's not about mothers or fathers. It's about mentally insane people who are screwed up by their parents, who then screw up their kids, who then screw up their kids. It's an endless cycle, and somebody needs to stop the cycle. Somebody needs to put out the education that's necessary. How do I avoid getting into a relationship with somebody who's toxic? Here are the signs of a toxic person. I mean, what I would like to see personally is AI take over the entire system, because you can put in there text messages and it will
Yep.
literally tell you, it'll pump out, this person has narcissistic tendencies, this is a person that's abusive, this is this, that, the other thing, based on your text message threads. And believe you me, I've done it. I've put in the whole transcript of the court transcript. You know, AI can determine abuse. You
Yeah.
submit that with your motion. Like, here's our interactions. Here's an unbiased opinion of a AI system. That's what we need in the court, not these biased judges who are making billions of dollars a year off of our children's suffering.
Yes. And half of these children are homeless. They have addictions, drugs, alcohol. You know, they can't sustain a healthy relationship with anyone, not even themselves. You know, they're suffering with all this mental health issues, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually. I mean, where are they being trafficked to? Who are these people that are putting their hands on our young kids, our daughters, and even sons? My son, right after the trial in 2022, that I went through after 18 years, him accusing me of abuse, I found him in the dark web. And he has women throwing dishes at him while he's standing there with bondage and in his underwear. He promotes for the Royal Canadian Navy. He recruits young people. Is this normal? Is this his part of his resume? You know, this is serious stuff. And he suffered a psychotic episode on Zoom trial, knowing that his videos are out there. This is horrifying. And this is my boy. And when I see young men, like I said, in documentaries or read about them and all this, I picture my son right away, because this is how Russell Peterson did the same thing. He murdered women, a woman, and, you know, he had a wife, he had kids, he had a normal life behind his other life. And these are really dangerous people when they do that. So do we want our kids to grow up like that? Absolutely not. I mean, why are these judges doing this to our kids? Are they getting a thrill to watch us suffer? And the kids, do they want our kids to be incarcerated by the time they reach 14, 15? Their lives are ruined. 16. I watched my kids go from beautiful, loving kids at 15, 17, and 18 to overnight stone cold black eyes after I was falsely arrested. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he got to them. And, you know, when I was forced to get married, but I asked his mother on the night they surprised me with an engagement party. And she literally gives me her ex-husband's wedding ring as a gift from her son to me. And I'm thinking, whoa, wait a minute here. But anyways, I said to her, can I have his dad's address so I could invite him to the wedding? And she says, oh no, you don't want to invite him. He's a monster. No, your son's the monster. I mean, I had to marry him. I was forced to marry a psychologically abused young man. And that's my kids. That was my kids during the time that I got alienated from them. It's so hard that, you know, you cannot do this to children. When they're young, 3, 4, 5 years old, imagine the fear inside of them, not seeing their moms or their dads ever again. And you got a parent saying, oh, they didn't want to see you. That's the worst part, because we're fighting for them. And then we go to court and the judge says, oh, well, file a motion. You file a motion, nothing happens. You know, you don't even get, they don't follow court orders. I mean, did yours?
No, not at all. No, he directly went against the court orders because his lawyer advised him to, is what he said. So he just kept my kids from me for 3 months. No evidence of anything, any allegations, all perjury as usual. Nothing.
So did you have a lawyer?
I went through 6 lawyers and
You went
3
through
judges.
6.
I have had 3 judges recuse themselves off of my case. If that tells you
Wow.
anything.
Tell us about that. Can you?
So my first judge is now a partner at his lawyer's firm. Susan Steinhauer at Roderick Linton Belfance. His lawyer is Lisa Dean Carey. Nastiest woman I've ever met in my entire life. Soulless for sure. And the vexatious litigation it's disgusting. Lawyers like that should have their licenses revoked. The amount of damage those 2 caused my children for a job. I hope it's worth it, Susie Steinhauer, is what I tell her. I actually saw her a few months ago at a political rally, and I shook her hand and I said, you destroyed my children's lives. You took everything from them. For what? I hope the job was worth it. Because she's now a partner at his lawyer's firm. There was no evidence whatsoever against me. He had a history of criminal record. He had a history of disorderly conduct, DUIs, pled guilty to domestic violence, beat my kids. I had pictures that I showed the judge. She said it was an overzealous spanking. His lawyer actually wrote the final order with extreme language targeted at me and things that were not even true. So it was really psychologically harmful. And I mean, I've spent probably, at least $500,000 in trying to get my kids back over the course of 3 years. And it was all about money. Every deposition, the entire deposition for 8 hours was about money. All about money.
It's all about money.
Buddy? Yes. It's not about the kids. I said, are you going to ask me a single question about my children? Do you care about my children, or is all you care about money?
Money.
They care about money. That's it.
Simply
it's about
money.
So who's going to stop these people? We need to file grievances on a massive scale. File the grievances. Use ChatGPT to your greatest advantage. You can put every single hearing in there and ask it to find judicial violations, judicial canon violations, your state code violations, your constitutional right violations, and it will give you a list of all the violations and find case law showing the violations that were made against you in your case. You can load every single motion into that AI and it will pump out answers. And then from that, you can draft yourself a motion to file with the courts. You do not need a lawyer. My number one thing is fire your damn lawyer. Fire them. Their loyalty is to the court, number one. It's not to you. Number two, it's to uphold the judicial trust of the public in the court system. It's not to you. You're number three. So if their duty to you comes above the court, they will not help you. They cannot help you because they'll lose their license. And who's going to want to go against the court system? Even if they want to, they won't, because they're not going to risk losing their license by going against the court system. Because they swore an oath to protect it.
Right.
It's not just in any sense of the word. There's no justice.
None at all.
You need to stop hiring lawyers. Stop hiring lawyers. By hiring an attorney, you're telling the court system you're incompetent. You are an incompetent person and you need representation because you cannot represent yourself. You know how you change that is you learn the laws of your state. Learn your constitutional laws. Learn your codes. Learn your judicial canons. Learn your rights. You have rights. You have a sword and a shield. If you don't know how to use it, it's useless to you.
So, wow, that's a lot of information out there for people, and it's a simple task because I use AI quite a bit.
It really
I get
is. It's amazing.
I get a lot of great, statistics and everything from AI, and people are starting to challenge what I put out there, and they're getting quite rude about it. But you know what? It's AI telling me this. I'm not inventing this. But yeah,
Yeah,
people are getting desperate, and once they've lost all their money, they have nowhere to turn to anymore. So let's go to
right.
AI and get AI to help us. We're paying for the internet anyways. It's all there. Save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, the money my ex-husband paid just to get rid of me. My kid could have put their great grandchildren into universities and colleges
Yep.
because
Mine
we had
too.
it was $1 million home. I got $8,000 out of it. He got nothing. The courts took it all our assets, everything. And then he had to
What
start
a
hiding.
waste.
He had to start hiding money. And, that got him into a lot of trouble because he evaded taxes and all kinds of stuff and dragged his behind into more debt and more debt and more debt. I mean, he looks like the devil because he's aged, trying to get ways to manipulate people. It's just horrible to live that kind of way. If they live, if when you separate from your partner, there should be common grounds that no matter what you do or what you say, that child's going to the other parent for 2 weeks. And then you get the 2 weeks. But if that child comes back spurting out all this abuse, what parent is going to abuse the child when they only got them for the 2 weeks? Right? So these kids are being taught to do that, to go back, because they know that if they had fun with the other parent that they've been denied, and tell the one that's alienating them that how much fun they had with that mom or dad, they will be punished. So these kids have
Well,
to go back and get some kind of attention. So anything bad will put a smile on the alienator. Anything good will make them boil, rage.
right. And see, that's the problem. It's like it's been diagnosed already. Psychological professionals have already said to people, alienation is a mental illness. In order to alienate your child from someone who loves them, a safe parent, you're mentally insane. It needs
Mm-hmm.
to be seen as such in the justice system. Any parent who cannot co-parent has a mental illness and needs to go through mental therapy to fix
Absolutely.
their issues, because no sane person will purposely harm their child just to hurt another human being. It's insanity. And it
It
needs to be
truly
seen
is.
as such, and it needs to be reprimanded as such.
Right. Well, we have a lot of grandparents out there that are like, even my mom, she's a great grandmother and she's never met half of her great grandchildren. But, she's been dealing with parental alienation for 45 years. 45 years, my nieces and nephews, the younger ones, or the oldest, first ones, have been alienated since they were 3, 4, 5 years old. This is so sad that these sister-in-laws that I have 7 brothers, so most of them were alienated from their children. And then all of a sudden, I got the same treatment because it's an outsider of the family. They didn't like the love that we all had. It bothered them to see that the children, their children, gravitated closely to grandma, to grandpa, to aunties, to uncles over them. But that's normal. That's a normal reaction because the children don't get to see these people daily. They get to see us. So parents like that should be grateful that the children are respectful to the grandmothers and the grandparents, uncles and aunts, instead of punishing them by taking them away from them because they love them so much. This
Well,
is a
yeah, it's the same thing that happened in my case, where my ex-husband filed a protection order against my fiance. he wasn't allowed to be around the kids because my younger said he wanted him to be his dad. Well, I mean, would you
Mm,
blame him? You
no.
beat my kid. Why would you blame him for wanting someone else to be his dad when you freaking treated him like garbage and you made him feel terrible about himself? I mean, he used to tell me, I'm no good. Daddy doesn't like me. Dad is bad. What do you expect? Treat the child better and he'll
Yeah.
like you more. It's a
Yeah.
pretty simple solution. You know, don't be mad at my child because he likes someone else over you. Fix your behavior. Show my child more love.
Right.
Okay, don't abuse my child and maybe he'll love you as his father. You know,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
mentality is just it's psychotic. You
It
know,
is.
you would think you would want someone to love your child and give your child love and joy and peace. Why would you rob them of love and joy and peace of someone else, another person giving them positivity in their life? You want to be
Right.
the only person that they love and care about. That's just, it's ludicrous.
It is. It's getting really bad. We're 36 minutes into the show. So it's up to you how long you want to go. Do you have any contact with your kids at all?
So now after 3 years, I see them at a facility. After the 3 months of taking my kids from me for no reason, with lies, in spite of a court order, they prevented me from seeing my children. I settled my divorce and with a stipulation of I have to get 6 months of therapy and a third psychological report because the first two that said there was nothing wrong with me weren't good enough. So they wanted a third. So I got that done. 6 months of therapy. I see them every weekend for 2 hours. I have to pay for it at a facility, a supervised facility.
Wow.
So that's 6 months of that, and that runs out January 17th, and then we can figure out overnight visitation.
How horrifying. That
Mm-hmm.
is just
Not a
3 years of
not a
that. And
not a single thing.
did he have to have a psych evaluation done?
He did, and he has 5 mental health disorders. He has a drug abuse related disorder, an anxiety related disorder, other personality disorder, um, alcohol related disorder, five personality disorders. And they still handed him the
He has the
kids.
kids.
Yes, 5 personality disorders.
What is wrong with that judge that did this to you? Like,
Exactly.
seriously.
Exactly.
Even my
Exactly.
judge called off record. I mean, this is serious shit when they say off record because they know they're saying something bad. But the judge called him off record that he was a conniving, scheming, manipulative liar and had no doubt he set me up. Because I went to jail twice, never got to see my kids again. And had no doubt he set me up. But he gets the house and kids and don't pay support until the house sells. I mean, he knew. He literally knew that this man is a monster. But let's give him the girls anyway, so he could abuse them
Well, here's
whatever
what he
way he
told
wants.
me. Speaking of monsters, he said, "You think I'm a monster? I'll show you what a monster is." I have that on a recording. I'll
Wow.
show you a
Wow.
monster.
Wow. These court systems are really letting these people get away because I got assaulted by a man that was 6'5", maybe. And here I'm only 5'2", but he assaulted me in a church ground. But when we had our case heard last year in January, the judge asked him, "Does Mary have anything to fear from you?" He goes, "Oh yeah, Mary has lots to fear." And I'm thinking, okay, the guy gets off. He got a 12-month peace bond. This is what they're giving these abusers. Either a 12-month peace bond, slap on the wrist or nothing, and boom, they go and hurt somebody else. What is the system here all about these days, especially here in Ontario, Canada? I mean, wow, we have Attorney
I think
General.
I think part of the problem, the biggest part of the problem, is the lack of education. A normal person would not understand how in the hell any human being could be that devious. You like, there's no way. Like, how can this person say all this stuff about this person? But it's true. But until you experience it, You would never, ever imagine that anybody could be that evil. And it is evil. But
It,
that's what people are going through. But because
it,
they can't wrap their mind around the fact that somebody could be that devious, they think you're
yeah.
lying.
If you don't run into a narcissistic personality, I hate using that word because it's giving them a title, but if you don't run into one of those type of people, I mean, wow, you're lucky. You are lucky.
Right.
In the
Right.
next 10 years, everybody's child's going to be like that if they go to court, because there's like over 55 million families that were affected, and our children, they're out there by the drones abusing parents over social media, um, as they're older now. And so they want to cut the social media off for kids under 16, which is good because they're picking up all these bad habits from, their siblings that are older and stuff, hearing them trash a parent. But, TikTok is really bad for that too. I see they're just trashing a good parent. And, when a parent commits suicide, they're there laughing, saying, aha, that, one target down. That's your parent. That's just nasty. You know, I don't get it
The, the
anymore.
the mental illness that I see in the world today, it is so sad. Someone needs to change our future for our children. Someone needs to save our children. Someone needs to step in and help these children with their mental health issues that are a direct result of their parenting. The parents are the ones that are creating these monsters, like my
Right.
mother-in-law. She's the one, because you create this golden child where they can do
Mm,
no wrong, and they live to please the parent.
yeah.
They're not autonomous. They're not their own little human. They can't be their own little human.
No,
They live
they're a
to please
robot.
the parent. Yeah. So they can't be themselves. They're so fearful and afraid. They are just, you know, they're so psychologically bound by this parent to try and please this parent that is impossible to please. That's one of the main things, is nothing you do will ever be good enough for this parent.
That's right. That's
Nothing you
right.
do will ever please them. So it's this endless cycle where this child grows up and ends up in relationships where they can't please their partner either, because you
Yeah.
mirror the relationship that you see in your childhood. So my children, I hope to God I can get them back soon so that I can help them, because I
I
have the
hope so too.
tools.
Do you have your parents support you in this? Because I know my ex-mother-in-law, she killed two husbands by keeping their kids away from them. I mean,
My father my father passed away last year. I had to file a motion to get my kids to go see him for one last time before he died, because my ex-husband
I
said
did
that I
too.
can't take him. So they did get to see my father before he died.
No,
So he passed away last year. I still have my
so
mother.
sorry. So sorry.
Yeah, but again, she's an abuse victim. That's why I married the man
Yeah,
I married, because of
me
what
too.
I saw in my childhood.
Yeah,
Because my father was very psychologically and emotionally and mentally abusive to my mother.
yeah,
So we usually pick one worse, or somewhere along the same lines of what we had in our childhood. And that's this really the saddest part of it, is these children, they're seeing their parents interact. Just separate and live in your houses, have your time when you have your time, and keep your kids out of it. you know
yeah.
you might hate your spouse, but God, you're abusing your child by bringing them into the middle of it. My mother-in-law, until my ex-husband was 42, she'd call him for hours bashing his father. Your dad is this and your dad. That's what's wrong with him. He's doing the
Mm-hmm.
same thing to my children. It's a
Yeah.
cycle that's perpetuated.
And then when you tell them that, I said that to my mother-in-law one day. Um, I says, your son is doing this. And she started laughing. And
Mine too.
he would flip up the lights in the middle of the night while I was sleeping and get me to wake up so he could do whatever he wanted to do with me. But I said to her, I said, he's flicking the lights on to abuse me. And she went, oh, Gary, you don't do that, do you? And I'm thinking, you got rid of his father because he did that. And this is how you're going to tell him to stop? Like, really? Do you not see your son emulating his dad? When my son did that, was emulating his father by abusing his sisters, I would tell him, I said, you don't do that. You don't hurt your sisters. How would you like it if your sisters hurt you? And my son, at 5 years old, pulling out his glasses, is so frustrated, saying, Dad's a jerk, Dad's a jerk. I said, well, you can't say that about your father. You're not allowed to badmouth anybody in this home. I said, what's the problem? And he says, Dad hit me. Dad hit me. And all I could do was hold him. So I spoke to the dad and said, you can't be hitting your kids. And didn't he teach my kids to call the police every time I said no to them? This is how I was getting punished for protecting my kids. And, we don't know what to do anymore when we're married to this kind of people, because mentally they're not there to even register what we just tried to tell them. And we got to talk to them as if they were a 2-year-old child. We can't be yelling at them.
Yeah.
You can't yell at them because it's not good. So I never yelled at my ex-husband ever in front of my kids or anywhere. And when the ex-husband told my kids he was filing for a divorce, he told them, I was outside in the backyard. He told the kids before I even knew. My daughter comes out and she says, is it true you and Dad are getting a divorce? She's 16 and a half years old. I said, what? I said, is that what your dad told you? And she says, yeah. I said, wow. I said, I guess so. I didn't know what to say to her. And then she says, you and Dad never fight. And we didn't, because I always calmly had to talk to him like a 2-year-old, even when he was 46 and my kids were 15, 16, and 18. I talked to my husband like a 2-year-old. I had to. He couldn't register like a 15, 16, and an 18-year-old because he was taken away from his dad at a very young age. So he didn't know how to react with kids to adults. He had to like full temper tantrums. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
Mine had temper tantrums too. And that's that's what people don't understand about these abusive people is they're stuck at whatever age psychologically that their biggest trauma happened to them. Mine is stuck at age 3. That he was molested at 3. And so his mentality is stuck at a 3-year-old. So unless you deal with him or interact with him like a 3-year-old, it doesn't register, like you said. It doesn't. And it's so sad, but that's what happens. They're just passing it along to their children. They're passing along all this trauma to their own children because they're traumatizing the children, taking away the other parent. I mean, think of even an adult. I mean, how an adult handles the loss of a parent. You're doing that to your freaking child.
Yes. You're traumatizing them.
Worse. It's worse than losing a parent just once.
Yes,
it's every day. It's because every day reliving the loss of your parent.
Yeah, because you want to reach out and grab them, but you're not allowed to. You can't. That's so sad. I mean, I've lost two children already by an evil father that killed his kids, kept the other 3, but I dealt with the other 2. I got closure on the death of them.
Right,
exactly. There's no closure with this alienation.
There's no closure. It's like losing them every single day.
Yes.
Dealing with a loss every single day instead of just once.
Yes. And then to hear from them as adults that I will never get to see my grandchildren. And when they do have children, they'll tell them what an abusive mother, crackhead, alcoholic I was. And I'm going, this is all written in social media. This is like the whole world got to read all this. And I'm thinking, wow, I don't even drink. I've never done crack. And you've never been beaten. And you tell the world that you've never been beaten, but you tell the world that you watched me beat your brother and sister. Now, come on. You either did one or the other. But this is what they're doing. They're so delusional. These poor kids. They want to be with us. But this is their way of saying, back off, because Dad's going to hurt me or Mom's going to hurt me. They have to hurt us. And that's the hard part for them, because I mean, I couldn't do that to my mother or my father. I would never speak to them the way my kids speak to me, ever, no matter how I was alienated. I mean, I was alienated from my dad for 40 years, but I never, ever
Well,
called him.
just think of the level of damage to their brains for them to
Yeah,
act that way.
I
And
know.
that's what people have to realize about their children. Your children that are lashing out at you, they're psychologically damaged. They're literally Stockholm victims.
Yes,
And you got to think about, how hard was it for you to leave the situation? You kept making
absolutely.
excuses every time your friends were like, you're married to a psychopath, he's doing this and that and the other thing, and you're like, but he's a good person, I mean, he's good some of the time. And that's what our children are being exposed to. That's what our children are living with. And it's more painful to see your other parent, your alienated parent, in pain. It's less painful to cut them off
Mm-hmm.
and side with the abuser. That's why they
Yeah,
do it, because it's
yeah,
too painful for a child to see half of themselves suffering every day. It
yes.
becomes too great for them to bear. And so they just cut off their emotions entirely. They just shut down. And it's not anything against the parent.
None. We got a comment up there. Would you like to read that, Carrie Ann?
I get regular contact, but every day without is a lost day on a broken heart. I totally 100% understand that.
Yes, that's so sad, James. Where are you calling from, James? If you could, give us a update. In you in the States or Canada? I know Canada, we have a lot of broken-hearted people. I go to the heart clinic and I hear a lot that they have broken hearts because they haven't seen their grandchildren. I mean, this is true. People have heart attacks. They die in their sleep,
Yeah,
sad,
broken
lonely.
heart syndrome.
Yeah.
Broken heart syndrome.
So
And
James is from Scotland. That's where my
we
ex-husband's stepfather was from, was Scotland. Beautiful country.
we need to stand up collectively as the human race, we the people, and stand up for our rights. We
Mm-hmm.
need to demand that our rights are honored, because we have laws and regulations that protect us, but nobody knows how to use them. We don't know our laws of our countries, of our states. There's laws and regulations in every country and state. There's case law for every there's a bar association. There's grievances you can file. There are steps that we can take to begin to remedy the situation and get rid of these unethical legal professionals.
Absolutely.
We need to
Absolutely.
start holding them accountable. And if you need an accountability partner, go find a friend who they can collect all of your evidence for you, and you collect all of their evidence for them, because it's so hard to go through your own evidence. It's like you're reliving it every single day
Oh,
of your life, and it just
some
shuts
of
you
us
down
have
completely.
stacks.
Yes,
Stacks.
you can't get through it. It took me
No,
3 years to file grievances. 3 years. I could, and even still, I filed them and I was out the rest of the day. It was so exhausting. It was so draining. Have someone else go through your evidence.
right. Can you read that one for us?
It's been a 2-year battle in court. I've met so many alienated parents through this. I have also been involved in a short film to promote parental alienation awareness. What film were you in, James?
I just did one too with Brian Sean. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, Inc. He's got a casting program. It'll be coming out in January. So,
The Stranger I Love. I haven't seen that one yet.
yeah,
I'll
me
have to watch
neither.
that one.
We're going to have to. Yeah. Well, thanks for that, James. Sad to hear. How many children do you have, James? Are you alienated from them? Like completely cut off? Or, like I haven't seen mine for 19 years other than court screens or the court hallways. but never did they ever come to see me again. When was the last time you had physical contact, Carey?
I see them on the weekends. I have to
Oh, so
pay
you
to see
do?
them.
Okay. Okay. So you
Yeah,
did
for
just
2
see them.
hours, supervised visits, because I settled my divorce after 3 years.
How are they with you when you do see them?
Oh, well, I posted a video of, they just absolutely love me,
Oh, yeah?
seeing me.
Oh, you have a
Yeah,
video? I
so,
didn't get to see it.
yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, I posted a video the other day, but, you know, part of it is shielding them from our pain. If we can shield our children from our pain, we can help them to stay connected. Because when
Yeah.
they come into our presence and they feel our pain, it pushes them away. It's too
Yeah.
painful for them. So they disconnect. So if we can find ways to stay centered and balanced before we see them or before we talk to them, it can help them drastically.
Yes. They see you happy, then they want to be happy. So,
Right. Because they're not happy at where they're at right now.
no, they're
Like
not. They're not. They need
living
to
with,
smile. They need to let that
right.
anger, or not anger, the evilness out, because they're brainwashed.
They really are. I see so much fear in my older son, and it's just it breaks my heart every time I see him because he's so struggling. He can't speak, and you can see he has so much that he's suppressing inside of him, and he's so fearful, but that's what these children are suffering. They can't speak out. They're afraid of repercussions.
Oh, so sad. James has 2 children, 5 and 7, just like yours, Carrie Ann, and he hasn't seen them for 8 months. So that's so sad. I mean, children are being taken earlier of age more today than they ever were. I haven't seen so many children between the ages of 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I hear it constantly, constantly. They want these parents to commit suicide so
They do.
that they won't come after the children anymore. This is horrific what is happening. We could go on forever, Carrie. We're almost on for an hour. But yeah, give us your last final thoughts on that, because parents need help. We're giving up. Like, there's 13 million people out there that attempted, contemplated, and did suicide. And this is so bad. 13 million people worldwide so far are going through it that we know, um, that
So
are
in
lost.
closing, yeah, I started helping out at this center. It's called D2 Human Performance Center, and they have an ETMS section where they treat veterans, first responders, firefighters, police officers for free for PTSD. And I found them, and they've been helping me so much. They're opening across the United States at the moment. But they do ketamine, the nasal ketamine. They do the ETMS for the brain, but it helps with
Mhm.
PTSD symptoms. So any kind of PTSD treatments you can do, whether it's laser, I've done a lot of things. I take supplements, but I've done so much that has helped me. There are things out there that can help you. You have to use every avenue that you can find. Get out in
Absolutely.
nature, do something. Insurance covers a lot of these treatments for PTSD, but we all have it. If you've been through the court system, you have it. You
Absolutely.
get triggered. It's
Yeah.
just, it's one of those things you have to live with until you get out of it. It's so difficult, and it shuts you down from living life, from being able to even work. There's no deadbeat parents. Very small percentage of people are deadbeat parents. You gave them PTSD because you took their
That's
children away
right.
from them. It's
That's
disgusting
right.
to call that person a deadbeat parent when you took their children away from them. Shame on that person.
That's right. And yes, James, there's a lot of people there with NPD. I mean, it's mental health issues are seriously gone away due to the family court system, and a targeted parent seeking revenge. We need to end this segment. now, but we could have you back, Carrie Ann, for part 2 anytime. Maybe you could come on and educate people about what you know on how to file stuff. I think that would be good because I'm very like, wow, I don't know much about computers. I know how to do podcasts and stuff like that, but simple things. But you can come on because we have Canada Court Watch that helps us do programs for parents that are going into court today so that they don't have to go through the process and everything's already made. Like you said with AI, here you go, judge, read this and ta-da,
Right.
let's get this over with. I want my child, da da. And, you know, we could split 50-50. No more of this stuff where the child has to choose. That's such a traumatic part
It
right
really
there,
is.
to make a child choose over a mother and father. Like, wow, I still couldn't choose over my, you know, my ex to leave him. So how does a child get to leave a parent? But thank you so much, Carrie Ann from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Mariel Kovacs from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. We're here to help support you. We're trying to find solutions, and you know, without talking about it, we don't know how to help you. So if you can, you know, join us one day on Let's Talk Real Talk. Share your story, and the more we get out, the easier it is for us to find people that can help you and help us. And until then, alienated parents, grandparents, and children, don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on each other. Uh, you only got one family, and this is very important because once you're in family court, you don't want your kids stuck in it for the rest of their lives, even when they haven't even been married. So until then, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again in the next few days. Goodbye, Carrie Ann.
Care.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. From Molly and me, good day.